Hello. Okay, so let's paint our picture. So the first thing is to work out where the horizon line is going to be. And so if this is the middle of the paper, then it's just below the middle, so about here. Now I do a very light pencil line because this is just a guide, and what we have over here is not a line but a hill like that. So really this line is just an artificial guide, and then on the other side we have little bumps and whatever like that, where the mountain comes down to the field. Okay, so then we need to do the mountain over here. So we've got these small mountains, 1, 2. Now I'm not too bothered about doing this exactly correct. I do want to get it roughly correct, and I might possibly sell this one day to somebody who has climbed up this mountain, Kuju mountain. And so I suppose to some extent, if I get it fairly correct, that could be a good thing. But I think if you get the basic shape right, that's good enough. Because in watercolor painting, we want to be quite loose, I think. Painting in a loose way leads to much more exciting paintings. So if we get caught up too much in details, we can lose that looseness and lose the kind of excitement of watercolor paintings, loose watercolor paintings. So I don't want to do too many lines here either. Then the next tricky thing is the path. So it gets smaller and smaller until basically we can't really see where it is. So we have to guess a little. So there's going to be grass here, and then what happens here is the path splits into two because there's like grass, an island of grass in the middle, but I'm not going to do that or draw that because it's just confusing. So one of the important things in watercolor painting is readability. Like, can you read what's happening in the painting? And if you can't, then that's not good. That's a bit of a problem. Now here there are lots of little stones, and I'm not going to do all of them. I'm going to do just a few. So yeah, I'm just going to do a few of them. Okay. So, but the important thing, so yeah, with these stones, the first important thing is to not do too many. The second important thing is that they come all the way across right into the middle of the path. Yeah, so it's quite hard work walking along this path because you always have to be watching out for a stone that could trip you up. And maybe the third important point is this edge here where the grass is. We want this to be quite irregular, so we don't really want a line here like that. We want to get rid of lines, and also we want irregular sized rocks. So we want some big ones, want some small ones, we want some long ones, some round ones. We want variety. And yet at the same time, don't go too crazy. Maybe it looks like I've gone crazy and do too many stones. And don't end up with something that looks like a Toblerone. If you know what a Toblerone looks like. So, yeah, I think that's it. Okay, so then we've got some grass here. Now in my previous paintings, you've got yellow grass here and then darker grass here. And I didn't do the darker grass because I thought it was just a bit too much. But now I think it might actually be a bit boring without it. So I changed my mind about that. So I'm going to have that darker grass. Now the next thing is the figures. So what am I going to do here? The first important thing about the figures is getting the height right. So about this high. And this is a person coming towards us. And doesn't look like he's walking that much, which is a bit of a problem. Okay. But if I do a bit of dry brush on his legs, might be okay. And then two figures here, walking, maybe walking towards us as well. Now I really need to make these figures look a bit, how can I put it, slanted and not like wooden. His legs like that. Try and make the legs a bit different. There's a bit of a shadow. Oh dear, they look tiny. So make him a bit taller. His body a bit bigger. There we go. Okay, that's a bit better. And then we're going to have figures here. And this path doesn't look quite right. Maybe a figure here. And bit by bit, the figures just become blobs. Okay. And I think that looks fairly okay. The height is a little bit strange, but then again, you do get tall people and small people. So, fat and thin people. And the more you can have the variety in your figures, even if it does look a bit strange, the better. Okay, so now it's painting time. And the first brush I'm using is my mop brush. So here we go. I'm going to get a blue. Oh, what I'm going to do first is wet the sky. Okay. So let's just wet this sky. So the paper I recommend is normally a little bit smaller than this paper I'm using. I think this is 30 by 20 centimeters, or no, maybe 40 by 30 centimeters. Just a minute. Okay, here we go. It's always good to have a ruler. So 40 by 30 centimeters, and so I think that is something like 4, 8, 12, 16 inches by 12 inches, very roughly. Please don't trust my mathematics. Okay, so I've wet that. I might even spray it a little. And here we go with a blue. Quite a strong blue. And the important thing here is we're not going to do a lot. We don't want to do a lot. So that's just a little bit. And a little bit there. And the reason we're not going to do a lot is because we want a lot of lovely white fluffy clouds showing through. So there we go. That part is fairly easy. Now we're going to make a light red. So we get some red, add a little bit of this blue to it, add a whole load of water, and I dab it on my rag. That's very important because it just gets rid of excess water. There probably is too much on the brush. Now, beginners don't do that enough. They don't use their rag enough. It's super important. And can you see how I'm blending this sometimes with the blue as well? So maybe the sunlight is coming from over here. But sometimes I just blend this together like that. It's looking quite nice. Now do be careful because your white will disappear so quickly. Already a lot of mine has disappeared, and you don't want that. Now we're making a stronger grey, blue, red, touch of yellow. It's a bit too watery, so wipe it on my rag. Try to have a fairly clean rag, else you're going to pick up hairs and stuff and then put that on your paper. Okay. There we go. And that first wash I did probably wasn't strong enough. It's almost disappeared. Okay, but I think that works. Now we're moving on to the mountain, and I want the mountain to be basically this kind of purple colour. Maybe a touch stronger. Ooh, too much yellow. Too much yellow ochre. Okay, a bit more red. Okay, and here we go. Here we go, go, go. Okay. Looking pretty good. Going over a bit there. And then here at the bottom, bit browny. So I've got some yellow ochre, touch of red, and then a tiny bit of blue, and it'll go brown. Yep, there we go. And I want a bit of brown here. Do this in a very, ad hoc fashion, like very rough and loose. There's a general pattern like that. Okay. I was going to say, let's give it a spray. But if we do, be careful because you might end up spraying the sky. It's not too bad, but it will have a bit more texture to it. You can spray this way from this angle. And there we go. But it doesn't really need a spray too much, I think. Now we're going to do the yellow ochre. So there's a lot to do in this wash. So just take your time, relax, and just be happy that you're not being filmed. Okay. So yeah, I want this to be, this is pure yellow ochre. And it's pure yellow ochre because I want this to be a lovely golden colour. Have to remember to leave some space for the path. And I don't mind this going into this brown up here. I have no problem with that. And going over the figures too is okay. So looking quite good. These little white gaps are fine. I want to go around the rocks if possible. And then about here, I'm going to do that dark brown now. Previously, I just did the whole thing yellow. But I think a touch of variety is good. So yellow ochre, my red, and a touch of blue. Goodness me, not that much. Okay, move it over here. See, when you mix colours, you can move it around, yeah? If it's like you're in an area where there's too much blue, move to another area on your palette where there's less blue. And here we go. Talking too much. Let's get on with the painting. Spray. It's drying out. Wow. Big time drying out. So it is a bit tricky to paint around these objects with that brush, so I'm using my pointed oval. A pointed oval is better. Yeah, a pointed oval is better for painting around objects. A mop brush is really good for covering a lot of space quickly. And excellent for skies, big areas. But as soon as you need to start painting around things, then I recommend something like this pointed oval. I think it's maybe my favourite brush actually. Okay, and that's looking pretty good. And then we're going to do our darks. So blue, red, and yellow ochre. I'd normally go for the burnt umber, but I'm only using 5 colours here. So here we go. And I should be doing this up here. So I use my rag, get rid of the excess water, yeah. Very, very important, use that rag. I see so many beginners, they don't use it, and then their brush touches the paint and you get this explosion as all the water leaves the brush and goes onto the paint, and it spreads out and there's a high chance of getting a cauliflower. You know, one of those ugly lines. Now these marks look a little too similar. So sometimes I'll do just a dot like that, yeah, to make it look a bit different. And then it's drying out here, so I really need to spray it. Now with this shadow area, you just continue. It's mostly all connected. And then spray. Yeah, very useful tool, the spray bottle. definitely get one. They are super cheap, super cheap, and extremely useful. Just gives you more time to work on something. But remember, don't spray directly at the picture. You want the spray to go across, like horizontally, and then drop down onto the paper. That way you're not shifting paint around on the paper itself. I mean, to be honest, you probably could use it to do that if you ever wanted to, which is something I'll do in the future because it sounds quite fun. Yeah, not too bad. Okay, shall we do something a bit flash then? So I think it's time for something flash. So we're going to get a liner brush. We're going to get pure water on it. Remember, wipe here, because you get water there and it runs down onto your paper and makes a big mess. And we're just going to do pure water along here. I was careful not to put the top bit in the water, so I don't have to wipe the top bit, the newel, or whatever it's called, the newel. Could have given it an easier name to say, right? Okay. So if your paint's still fairly wet, but not super wet, then this is a good technique, and it just gives a highlight, and so a bit more variety. And you just have to play around with this, like sometimes add a little water, sometimes add a lot, sometimes do long strokes like this. Yeah, it does mean that you'll probably end up screwing it all up, but the important thing is the long view, not the short view. The short view is, oh dear, you've screwed up the painting. Maybe you've screwed up the painting again, right? But the long view is that you're developing, you're getting better at watercolor painting, and eventually that does mean you're going to end up with some fantastic paintings. You're getting more comfortable with the medium, you're experimenting, which is not only making you better, but is also a lot of fun. So if you can, do try to experiment. Yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. Okay, let's spray. Okay, brilliant. And we've got this kind of rough edge, I think maybe there, which is what we wanted. I'm just trying to make this a nice irregular edge. That's all I'm doing. A lot of watercolor painting is about having nice edges, which often means like edges that are a bit irregular. Yeah, I think this line here looks too regular, so we need in some way to break that up. And I'm going to get some darkish paint. It's really hot now. It's summer in Japan. And to do this video, I've turned my air conditioner off and it is getting hot. It is getting very, very hot. And that, can you see how I'm trying to break up that line a bit and make it more irregular? And this one too. You don't want too much having perfect lines going across. Okay. Yeah, too regular. I think that's it. What I'm doing now is I'm looking at the whole thing with my eyes almost squeezed, not completely closed, but very, very, like, you know, squeezed together almost, so I can just see the general feel, the general pattern, and I'm just checking if it looks right, and if not, then just making a few corrections. Yeah, and I think that's it. I like it like this, unfinished. Sometimes I think the unfinished painting looks better than the finished one. Okay, let's leave that to dry. Okay, it's still not completely dried, but I think we're safe to go on to the next part, which is the path. By the path, it's pretty dry. So what we're going to do is basically an undercoat, and it's going to be the colour for the rocks. So the rocks have a beigey kind of colour, I suppose. So a touch of red, then a touch of yellow ochre, and I think that's pretty much the colour that we want. So, and we'll see how this goes. Now I might be overdoing it here, and I might have chosen too strong a colour, and maybe I should have just left it white, but we'll see, because white will obviously really stick out. Now I'm going over and I just kind of blend it in. I could wipe it out, but I think just blend it in like that is okay. Just be careful you're not picking up paint from here and it's getting darker, your path, because we want all of this to be fairly light. And we've got a little bit of a dry brush effect there. I think we'll keep that. And it's getting a little bit watery, but that's okay. And there we go, that's finished. And now what I think I'm going to do next is these mountains. Goodness me, I wasn't thinking about doing that. I think I'm going to use this flat brush. You could use a round brush though. First I'm going to do the mountains in the distance and then work onto this mountain. These are going to be a bit bluey, so I'm using my light blue and I'm mixing it with the dirty colours here until I get something like a grey. So I've got a bit of red in there and a bit of yellow ochre, and I like that. Mix it up well, have a quick look. Now if I can get some dry brush strokes, then I'll feel very happy. So at the moment that's not happening, but hopefully soon. Use my rag. Okay, we're starting to get a little bit of dry brush. It really helps so much. And then I'm going to start going a bit darker. More red. I mean more blue, more red, more everything. More yellow ochre. I might begin down here actually. It's a bit brown down here. And I might try and do this edge like that. A rough dry brush edge. And I'm entering into here a little. And I don't mind that. That's fine. So I realised that this might be a bit stressful for you at first, doing this dry brush thing. All I can say is practice will make you more and more comfortable at doing it. Just takes practice. Okay, I think that's looking passable. Okay, yeah, it looks quite good. And now this one, and we need to start going a bit darker. Okay, I think that will do. Spray. I got some splatter on my paper. When that happens, just get tissue and dab it. They don't always come off, but the ones that don't, they will become birds. So, thank goodness for birds. Okay, and then bit by bit, if we can get a dry brush effect, that would be very nice. Yeah. Maybe not as much as I wanted. Okay, so that's my flat brush I've been using. And now I'm going to do some darks in here. But it's looking good, isn't it? And for my darks, I'm going to use my pointed oval, because I find that with this one, I can just get the kind of edges that I want. So blue, red, yellow ochre. Wow, that looks very green. That looks very red. There we go. And let's have a quick look before I jump in. Yeah. If you can, you want to get nice edges, nice lines. You can't always. And some of your lines are going to be a bit off, but if most of them work, then it will hide the weaker ones. And what I'm doing here is basically just a bit of guesswork, so but it looks good. Okay. That all looks a bit regular, so I'm going to change it. I think that looks better now, don't you? And then I think I could leave it like that and that would be okay, but I want to scrape out a few lines. I just find it fun, and I like the textural effect. I think it looks good. So you have to put your finger right into the paint, or your fingernail, and then hold it there and scrape across. And maybe practice a few times on some scrap paper. Just remember though that your finger is getting very dirty and you need to wipe it with a tissue afterwards. So I think that looks good. Also, timing is very important. If you do it when the paint is very wet, then this mark will just disappear. And if it's too dry, you won't get any mark whatsoever. So yeah, I overdid it, I think, but still, I quite like it. I'm not sure these dry brush marks look so good. What's underneath looks white. I wanted it to look more like purple. But there you go. Still, it's better than nothing. And I didn't really get much dry brush here, but there you go. Next time. Next time. I always do my best to be an optimist. And I just know, and I just say to myself, in a future painting, I'll do that. I'll get it. I'll get it just right. Okay, I'm just getting a lovely dry brush edge here. Yeah, I think that works. I hope you can see now that these edges are so important. Really make or break a painting, you know, the feel and if it works or looks interesting or not. Okay, good stuff. Let's leave that to dry, and then we're going to do stones. Well, actually, we're going to do the path and just the path in the next bit, but it's quite tricky and we'll be using this brush, I think. Okay, so it has dried and now I'm going to do the path. So I use my pointed oval brush and I want a warmish brown. So yellow ochre, touch of red. Yeah, something like that. But maybe I need a bigger mix. I think we're getting there. So here we go. So the important thing here is to try and go around the rocks. So I think this pointed oval brush is wonderful for painting around objects. And if you get little gaps like that, that's good, because you can turn that into a little stone. So hopefully you'll get some little gaps like that. And if you go over a stone, then if you're quick, you can erase it. So yeah. Okay. And just be careful you don't leave the edge too long so that it dries out and then you've got a bit of a problem. I didn't realise, but the grass is here. I'll have to add that later. So this brown grass should come around here. Whoops. And it needs a spray. Very, very useful. Whoops. I'm going over some rocks. It's okay. Don't have to do all of them. Yep. I think that will do. Okay, and that spraying has given the path a little bit of texture, which is nice. And I might just do this now. This is wet, which is good, so I can blend it quite easily and do some grass here, like that. Have to go a bit hard here. Hard and dark, or hard and heavy. Yep, pretty good. And then try and create that light brown from before. I do actually like doing some of this correction work, it's kind of fun. And then get my liner brush and let's do some hairs, well, blades of grass. Okay. And maybe just a few darks then, and then hopefully we're done. Get some blue, get some red, touch of yellow ochre, red, blue. Okay, spray it just to keep it wet still. Okay, here we go. I think that looks quite good. Yep. Maybe a bit too strong, but hopefully it will dry off a bit. Okay. Okay, and let's leave that to dry. Okay, now we are going to paint the shadows on the rocks. So this needs to be quite a dark colour, and I think for this I'm going to use my bamboo brush. A round brush is perfectly fine. So if you've got a round brush like this one, no problem. In fact, that might even be better. Or just as good anyway. So here we go. So when you're doing rocks, it's basically just blocky shapes that you're doing mostly. So try to keep it very, very simple. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this one though. Looks a bit weird, but there you go. Maybe that will work. Oh yeah. Yeah, just try to keep it very, very simple. Don't get fussy. Or at least try not to. Sometimes you do get caught up, like I did here a little bit. Like if you've got a bit of a strange shape, like that was. Try not to panic and just do some kind of simple thing. Still fiddling with that one. Yeah, oh that's nice. You might want to scrape a bit out now and again, especially with the big ones. And I think it's looking good. My only problem is it all looks a bit too clean if you look at it, but it looks fairly nice. Now I must admit, or maybe confess, that normally I would use white paint with these rocks because it's very easy and looks very effective. Sometimes I mix it with another colour just so that it's not pure white and doesn't look too strong, too bright. Okay, still not quite there yet. Maybe that's it. And then for the rocks here, where I've got the grass, we're going to do something a bit interesting, which is get the liner brush, get some of this paint, and we're going to do grass hairs. So this is very fun to do, and can sometimes even look good. Yeah, I think that actually doesn't look too bad. I might even do a few just here. I think it needs a few here, so I'm just moving up and down very quickly and creates quite a nice effect. Oh yeah, okay, quite like that. And I thought the brown on these rocks would be too dark, but I'm possibly thinking that it's too light. I'm using my liner brush now, and I'm just doing a few cracks. Oh dear, I left the air conditioner on. I hope it doesn't get noisy at all. Yeah, and if I do use some white paint, little things like this, I can give them a highlight and it looks very, very nice. So that's what I would do normally. Okay, so up here, I might just do a few tiny birds with my liner brush. Normally I do my birds at the end, but I'm going to let this dry down here because that's where I'm going to do my figures. Okay, a few birds. Looks quite nice. So I think that's pretty okay. Maybe I should do a bit of splatter down here, but I can do that later. So let's pause for now. Okay, so now I'm going to do the figures, and I'll be using these two brushes, the bamboo and the liner brush. And how am I going to do this? Well, first of all, I'm going to begin with a darkish colour, and maybe begin with these figures. And the top parts are not so difficult. It's the legs that are difficult because you need to do a kind of dry brush effect, which isn't easy. And then over here we've just got blobs basically. I only have to do their top parts really, or even just a blob bit by bit. Yeah, it's good to do things like these little blobby things because that are meant to be figures in the distance, because it just teaches you how to paint well. Don't try and draw things exactly as you know they should be. Develop that visual eye. And here we go, dry brush leg. No, not very dry brush. Wipe on my rag. I don't like those legs. It's becoming dry brush, but taking too long because I've finished now. And then a little bit of a shadow on these, and then there's some stones here. I guess I should indicate them. So you have to be careful with this liner brush because sometimes it's a bit like the blade of a sword. You've got a thin side and a thick side, and you can use both, but often you want the thin side. So just remember, it is a bit like a blade, and also the older it gets, the more tricky it is to get like a thin line, and you have to turn it around a bit and it bends a bit like this. But they're fairly cheap and they last fairly long. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh, here we go again. I always say this, oh, that's it, and then I just continue. I think we've done them. I think that looks like a nice kind of procession. Okay, it's on with these guys then. So first of all, I begin with just a dark colour, a purple, and what I'm focusing on first of all is just making a nice shape. So nothing else, forgetting about colour. Just a nice shape. And so you've got to think about how these figures are moving. And so there's a dynamicness to their posture. So maybe he's got one leg coming forward. That should have been dry brushed. There you go. And another leg behind. And one arm coming out. And a hand, which is a bit like a blocky shape like that. And then his hat. He's beginning to look quite good. But you know, at any moment you can just mess it up. So If you quickly try and wipe it out with some tissue, you might be able to save it. If not, after it has dried, then just wash it out carefully. You might wash out some of the background as well, so and give him a baseball hat. Some variety, yeah. I've done them both the same kind of height roughly, which is not so great. Bit different is better. But I think I do them the same height because I'm more afraid of having them look really odd, you know, one too big, one too small. And so I tend to do them all looking very similar. I understand that now. And the thing is, when you do look at real figures, sometimes, sadly, they do look a bit odd, you know, because some people are much taller than others, and other people do tend to be a lot shorter. And if you paint it exactly as you see it, it might even look a bit odd. You know, things are like that. Skies are like that. Sometimes how the sky really looks, if you painted that, people would think it was wrong. Sometimes, yeah. So it's a weird thing, but sometimes to make it look like it's real, you have to change it from how it really looks. How weird is that? Okay, they look quite nice. They really look kind of, you can see the physical roundedness, realness of them, right? So that's what you're aiming for. Don't give yourself a hard time if you don't achieve it. I still, after 20 years of painting, don't achieve it, and I've just gotten to the point where I accept that. I mean, I've watched professional artists on videos who sometimes don't get their figures right or really, really struggle. So, you know, it's a tricky thing. And if you pull it off, you've done really, really well. And if it looks half decent, you've done very, very well. You really have. Okay, so that's not too bad. Get a bit of a red. So I'm trying to make these figures look a bit prettier. Yep. And then I don't know what to do about his hat. Maybe I'm just going to keep it like that, because if I do it yellow, which I feel like doing, okay, let's try yellow, but it might just, you know, the background is yellow too, so, but if I do it very thick, it's about that readability thing, you understand? If it's too similar to the background, it might just kind of disappear or be confusing because you can't see it clearly. So you have to think about those kind of things. It's a kind of visual reading, a reading of images. We want to make a painting that when people look at it, they can easily read the picture and what's going on in the painting, that there isn't confusion. Normally. Art's a big area, right? So I guess I'm talking about semi-realistic kind of paintings. And I say semi because I like to play around with stuff myself. Sometimes make it a little bit more abstract, a little bit more, impressionistic. I don't always want to be copying exactly what I see. I think it's a bit boring for me nowadays, that. I mean, sometimes, yeah, but sometimes I like to do something a bit different, play around, have some fun. Okay, so right from the beginning, I'm going to give him a blue top, so might be a bit too similar this, but I'm using a limited number of colours. Perhaps if I could use other colours, I might use a burnt sienna or a green, cobalt green. I like that colour. Oh yeah. Make those arms a bit longer. They come down to about there. A little bit of a boring posture, to be honest. If he was leaning a bit to one side a bit, would be a bit more interesting, I think. His arms are a different length. Well, I mean, different positions, so that's quite good. They're not exact copies of one another. And maybe we can do him looking over there, but really we should have him looking this way, because if he's looking that way, he's kind of going out of the painting. And we really want him to be coming into the painting. Okay, we're doing some kind of shadowing effect here. Let's hope this works. Maybe. But darker at the top. Yep. Okay, I quite like that. I think if we give him a shadow, he might look quite nice. Yep, and then just do that with my thumb or finger, whatever it was, just to blend it in a little. Yep, I think those figures look quite good. He really looks like he's looking that way. Look this way. Yeah, so like I said, figures are difficult, but let's not be negative, yeah? They're fun. They're fun. And they really are a lot of fun. And when you pull it off, it's great. So this is a mix, this skin colour of, they're talking to one another, of yellow ochre and a touch of red. There we go, and then do his hands, and then maybe even these figures in the distance, these three chaps can be, yeah. There are no women, but actually in reality, in Japan, I see quite a few women actually, sometimes even by themselves. Going hiking. Yeah. So sorry for not doing a woman. I don't want to say that could be a woman, because I'm not sure. Looks a bit like an old guy. So that could be me actually. But yeah, you do get a lot of them now. A lot of female, what do you call it, trekkers or something like that. But I'm not sure it's always a good idea them being on their own, to be honest. Because even in this small place where I live, a woman one time going to a spa in a remote area here got killed. So it's a sad thing, but sometimes, and it's a bit of a scary thing actually, sorry for talking about this, but it's just the truth. Sometimes you get these predatory men and they're just waiting in remote places for a woman, basically. You know, obviously, you know, just a few odd people like that, but of course, you know, they kind of know what they're doing, and they I think, and luckily it doesn't happen too often here in Japan, but you know, they're kind of they find their place and then they wait there. pretty awful to think about, actually. So, but anyway, I just say things like that because it's really, really sad. That woman, she just wanted to go to a spa. She just wanted to have some fun time, and she wanted to be like a guy, just free, and you can walk where you want and do what you want, which hopefully everybody should be able to do. Should be able to do, right? Beginning to talk in Japanese. Nah, that's Japanese. But sadly, sometimes you have to be a bit careful. So I think that's it. And I might do some splatter here. And here we go with a little bit of splatter. So just a minute. I think maybe a light brown. Okay, and then tissue at the ready, just in case it goes in unwanted areas, like the white bit of the rock. That one did too. So you can quickly get in and get rid of it and stuff like that. Okay, and I think that's maybe a bit too orangey, that colour. So I'm just going to do it one more time with a bit more of a purpley colour, watery purple. And there we go. And I suppose we should sign it. And that's not because I think this is an absolutely amazing painting. It's okay, but it's not as stunning as I'd like it to be honest. But it's not bad. It's got quite a nice feeling to it. But it's always a good idea to practice doing your signature. Every painting, really. I don't do this, but I should. Every painting you should sign. And the reason is simple. Because you've got to get good at signing. Because one day you're going to do a lovely painting, and if you don't practice doing your little signatures, when you go to do a signature on that lovely painting, if you screw up that signature, you will be so unhappy. I know that because I've done that. I've ruined many, many paintings. So a signature is nothing to do with authenticity or genuineness or this is my signature. Well, if you want it to be, then fair enough. But for me, I'm using white paint, by the way. You can use red paint, whatever you like, just as long as it's clear. But for me, a signature is something full of artifice. It's a completely artificial thing. And so practice and practice and practice until you can do a lovely signature and it really looks nice on your painting and doesn't spoil it at all. So that's my advice on that. But do whatever you like. And I do just G and M. I keep it as simple as possible, so less chance of screwing it up. And I try to make it look somewhat abstract because I don't think text and images work that well together, in my own opinion. And I'll just show you what I would do with this painting. With my bit of white, I would do little things like this. Whoops, shouldn't have done that there because that's wet. So I would wait for it to dry, and then I do this. And it's just a little touch, but it really does make a big difference, in my opinion. Like that. And with these figures as well. So just a tiny bit of white with my liner brush. Sometimes I get a bit more than I want coming out. I did here. And then I try and tidy it up and fail like that. Goodness me. I don't think I'm convincing you here to use white. Just got to be really careful. Do you get a lovely thin line? Okay, and now I'm going over all the white paint. Goodness me. Okay, and we can hopefully sort that out in a minute. I'm just checking if there's anything else. Just a few little whites here and there. Gives a bit of variety. This messy thing, we can just get some tissue and get rid of that. And then, yeah. Just a few white dots. Make that a bit easier to read, the highlights on the rocks up here. The problem with using white paint is once you start, you can't stop. And then just get a dark mix. So if you do a big white blob, then you can try and put your finger over it, whatever, and get rid of it. Wipe it up a bit, and then you're probably left with something a little bit messy like what I've got here. So you make a lovely mix. It's normally next to a dark area like this, and then you just go over the top. Now it is going to go kind of greyish, but if it's just a tiny area you can't really see it, and you can just finesse it, yeah, and get back that lovely white edge. There we go. And I think that's it. And yeah, so I'm quite happy with this painting. Not super happy, but I think I've done everything fairly well. So the sky is a lovely sky, but I think I could have done a bit more of a grey in the sky. It would have looked more interesting. I think this mountain maybe needs a little bit more detail, this one, and this one perhaps has a bit too much, so I'm being really picky here. This edge is lovely. This is quite good, but even in here I feel like it needs maybe a little something, maybe. I'm not sure what. Maybe just a bit more variety or something. I mean, I think this effect looks nice, but maybe a bit more variety. I loved the path. I really like the stones. I think I got the colours right here, I think. I still think the path looks a tiny bit boring. I don't know why, and I don't know how to change that, but I'm just being honest. But I'm still very happy with it. And I like the figures. I think the figures look pretty good. But maybe I could make them even more dynamic. I'm not too sure about his leg. So bit by bit, it's really good if you can look at your paintings and just do a kind of criticism of them. And in a nice way. You've always got to be your best friend. And the reason we do it is so that we can do a better painting next time. So I love the dry brush effect here, and I'm glad I used a bit of white because it really helped. And these birds are quite cute. So there you go, have a go, and remember the most important thing is just enjoying it all. Bye for now.